up, peeps out there? My name is Casa from SMZ Comics,
My name is Teresa, also from SMZ Comics as well.
and this episode we're talking about the Sandman, episode
Episode 3.
3. Okay, so we had episode 1 and episode 2. So if you look for it, you're not going to find it. We had technical difficulties, and technically we're re-recording this because we're going to add something different, and it's came after we watched this. So we'll let you know what we added afterwards because we found something or someone took a picture of something that they created. Talking about Boss Logic.
Oh, okay. I was like, do I know about this?
Yeah. So we'll get into episode 3
Three.
of the Sandman. So the first thing we're talking about is, I guess, the changing of characters or the ending and the beginnings of characters in this episode. Compared to the other episodes, it was an introduction to characters. I think this is the first episode where a character actually ends. Spoiler alert, by the way.
Yeah.
So we're talking about which character ends in this case.
We're talking about Ethel.
Ethel,
The mom.
The mom. Okay, so Ethel, the mom, dies in a, as you said it, a Thanos way.
Oh,
Yeah.
because she turned to dust.
Yeah.
Essentially. Yeah.
Yeah, so she had the eye of protection,
The amulet of protection.
and she gave it to her son John to try to get him from using the ruby. It was her way, as you said, of trying
To protect him and, what mothers do for their kids.
and I kind of thought it was stupid because I could already tell it's just going to create, he's already a monster and he's going to stay a monster regardless if she does or not.
Well, he seemed very obsessed with the ruby.
Yes, and we learned a lot about that character, John, which is actually in a way was the introduction of his character, because the only time we saw John before was when he was a baby.
Yes.
So this is an introduction of John in the scene, and it is the ending of his mom in the scene. So two characters, one begins, one ends, and so we learned that John didn't know the truth behind who his father was or anything else.
He had an idea from conversations.
Yeah, and so he learns this stuff, and then after learning that stuff, the mom gives him the amulet, and then she turns to dust, and
She was 116.
yeah,
So.
and this is not in the exact order. There were scenes in between.
Yeah.
Okay, and eventually for the storyline of John, at the end, he's trying to leave because he wanted them to help his mom, but then he wants to leave, and they think he did something to the mom, so they try to stop him, and unfortunately, he has that amulet on, so the people who try to stop him end up dying.
Yes.
And when he gets outside, there is someone waiting for him. Who's waiting for him?
Corinthian.
Corinthian. Okay, the guy with the
The sly guy who waits for everyone.
his eyes like teeth, which is weird because he just showed up out of nowhere. He's there, gave him a jacket,
When the previous episode we saw him
talking to the mom. Or was he?
he was talking to the mom, but see, now I'm getting it confused.
He was talking to mom. He tried to attack the mom. He ended up going back to the dream world.
He was outside the gates
Yeah,
of whatever dreams.
yeah, and then he
World is
decided
called,
he's
yeah.
like, I'm gonna go back. So he goes back. But in this case here, it's like he's helping John on his journey because his goal is for Morpheus not to have his power back, and so by the guy keeping the ruby, then therefore Morpheus can't have it, and he won't have that power, and which means that the Corinthians can stay out in the real world. Or
He can continue doing whatever he wants.
Yeah, which
because
was-
that's how the first episode started. The whole reason why Morpheus got captured is because he was out chasing Corinthian because he was a rogue nightmare. That's what they
nightmare,
call him.
and he's out killing people in real life, well, at least in our world,
Yes.
which they call it differently. Okay, so with that ending and beginning of those two characters, they introduced a new character which we had heard before, but this introduces it was Joanna,
Joanna Constantine.
as they pronounce it. I always say Constantine.
I know.
So with the character of Joanna, one in the comics, this character is ancestor of John. So I mean, she's like way back in time, but
So she's before John.
she's before John. But
Okay.
in this show, it seems like this is modern time. So that kind of makes you wonder then who is this character really? Because if John exists during the same time and this is a ancestor, who knows? But I mean, they could be doing some whole thing where the worlds and the different universes or different planets. I think that they have like planet this, planet that. So we don't know which one they're on. So that could be the difference also, and whether this is connected to any of the other DC TV shows or even movies.
Sure.
So if it is, they could always say this is a different planet, than the other ones. That's how Supergirl, I think, started off first. Supergirl is on a different planet or different Earth. Earth, that's
different
what they call it.
Earth something.
Yeah, so she's on a different Earth than the Flash, Arrow, and whoever else was in that universe. Then they kind of try to combine them together by having them go from different Earths. So we don't know if that's the case. But with Joanna, she still has that feel of the other Constantine characters.
She's very bad.
Yeah, it's more of that. I don't really care so much about life as much. I'm here to do my job. And what I really like about the Constantine character, which Keanu Reeves is still my favorite. I like the TV show that they have with the other guy, and he also was in, I think, Arrow and maybe Flash. So they did combine that.
I've never watched any
Yeah,
of
so
those.
that so yeah, I've got the Constantine TV show was combined with the other WB shows.
Oh.
Yeah, so that was cool about having all those characters there. And I wouldn't mind seeing either him or, I know Keanu Reeves wouldn't do it, but to see one of them in the Sandman, or
It would be, yeah.
yeah, they connected somehow.
We do like it when they bring actors or actresses from previous shows,
previous
to,
shows.
to replay the same character.
Yeah, so this case here, the character, I like Constantine or Constantine because it reminds me of a magical, mystical Batman. You know, it doesn't have any real powers like, other people have, or magic or sorcery. Just uses different trinkets and gadgets and stuff
Yeah.
like that. So that's why I think the character's, to me, is pretty cool. And this character, to me, kind of hit the spot for it. It did the same exact effect with the woman that it has with the man. And I think this is the first time on TV we've seen a Constantine woman.
Yeah, I haven't seen anything like that.
So that's what makes it cool. Now, to jump off of it really quick, because this is what we're talking about. We recorded this before, but we were talking about this last time we recorded this, about the character and about the movie Keanu Reeves. And then you showed me a picture of something.
Oh yeah, Boss Logic had posted an image of Constantine 2.
Too talking about it's happening, know.
Yeah.
So that's
Did I
what.
show you the other one from today? It's
No.
2 pencils and it's bloody.
Oh, John Wick.
But it was John Wick, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so we had talked about that, and it was just kind of amazing after we recorded that. Then he posted that about a part 2 coming out.
Yeah.
Because I really like the character. But back to the discussion of this episode. So I'm going to ask you, since it's, I don't want to be so gender thing. We've see that this character is a female. In the other episode, I believe it's the Maggot's son. I can't think of his name.
Magnuson. I can't think of his name, but I know his lover was Paul.
Okay, his lover, who happens to be of same sex. And then we see here that Constantine has a girlfriend, which is same sex, but then we also find out from that dream state that she was in that she's had guy lovers too. So in this case
Yeah.
here, we have to assume she's some type of bisexual.
Bisexual.
So my question is just, how did you feel about that whole, I guess, revelation of the character?
Well, for me, since it was only episode 3, it seemed like it didn't feel very organic. I guess maybe because the first episode you already saw same sex, and I'm seeing it again in the 3rd episode. I'm like, it's not my first time seeing this. I think the first time I was exposed to same sex relationships was Sailor Moon, even though they tried to make it seem like they were cousins. So it didn't feel organic. I think they did it a little too soon.
Well, when you go to cartoons or anime, I feel like has been doing that for a long time, because they always
Yeah.
have the guys who are really close or look very feminine, and they always kind of like each other, or holding each other, or you can't be around this one and don't be with the girls or stuff like that. Or
Yeah.
they play gender roles like on Host Club, where the girl is thought of as a boy and she blends in with the boys. So they do a lot of gender bending, I guess, in those anime before it was, I guess, the thing to be, I don't want to say popular, but what's the word I'm trying to be, culturally, or
No, it's mainstream.
yeah, but it's like being respectful towards the towards the I'm gonna say, get it all twisted, LGBTQ community. And before, they didn't have representation in movies, but in the case of anime stuff, there was representation there, but it wasn't so put out in your face.
Really, is it more accepted in Japanese culture?
I think it is, because even we talk about, and I was saying about one time, a long time ago, the samurai, there were some samurai who would use their femininity to actually be able to get ahead in their ranking. So, and it was okay to be that way, in that situation. So, but jumping back to the episode,
Yeah.
and the way I kind of felt that it's fine with being with what's going on now, which they did do with the other guy, but then now we see the second time with Constantine, just a different version, but I feel like they keep forcing it or shoving it down our throats to say, here.
It's like the Marvel scenes where they show the girl power, as they call it.
And I'm not sure if they're trying to be cool, in tune with what's going on right now, but sometimes it's just do it normal, do it natural. You don't
Yeah.
always have to put it in their face to be like cool and with it. So that was just something that I feel like that they need to work on if they're going to do something like that, and maybe not have to do it so much.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong
Because
with it.
like honestly at this point I feel like the next person they show in their relationship is going to be another same-sex one, or
Yeah.
they're going to do something, maybe even a transgender relationship. I feel like that's the next step. They're not going to show just a regular heterosexual type relationship.
What's fluid? Fluid. That's what it
Flu-
is.
yeah.
Fluid. So, all right. So back to the show. We talked about Constantine or Constantine. Cool character. I love the scene where she's basically in the church and she's getting rid of the demon. It was
That
really
they all assumed was in the princess.
yeah. So it was a really cool scene because the fact is that Morpheus comes in and commands Constantine to stop, and she pretty much was like, "Fuck you. I don't
Yeah.
really care what you guys say. I'm gonna do what I want to do because I'm getting paid my money." And I know
Triple her fee.
Yeah, and I
That's
don't
what
even
she
know
said.
who you are, so who cares? And then when she kind of found out who he was, it still wasn't a big deal to her. It was
It
like,
wasn't,
okay, yeah, whatever.
She's like, oh, I'm still collecting my money.
Yeah. So far in the other episodes, everybody's been like, "Oh my gosh, it's endless. It's this. It's whatever. All the nicknames he has."
That's true.
And for her,
Yeah, most people when they see him, they're just like, ah,
yeah,
like they
and
see God or
yeah,
something.
in awe.
Yeah.
And for her, it was like, "You ain't nobody. Who
It's like,
cares?"
you're in my way of my money.
Yeah, so that was interesting in that case. But eventually, the character she did her own thing and she went off of there and left after they did her story. And her story basically was to get the sand for him that was stolen because someone had sold it to her. But unfortunately, she left it at her girlfriend's house, which we find out that her girlfriend has it, and her girlfriend's really sick from it and dying because she was holding it. So
She held on to it for good dreams.
yeah, so to me, it reminded me of drugs. It's like when you get those drugs that make you forget your life and the bad things. And for her, it was that maybe Constantine had left her, and so this allowed her to forget, this horrible event that's going on, and so she can stay in these happy moments. So she gets that euphoric
Euphoria.
from this drug, and that's what to me the sand seemed like. In the human's hand, the sand becomes a drug. In the Sandman's hand, Morpheus' hands, it is a drug, but it's his power over others to be able to give them this drug, which means he's like a drug dealer in a way. He's a drug
Just
dealer.
sprinkle a little bit on you.
Yeah, he's a drug dealer, and he allows you to have great dreams, but
Either
just like,
great dreams or nightmares.
but that's the thing about drugs. Sometimes you have a good trip, and sometimes you have a bad trip. So it's kind of weird. So he's pushing stuff. So it was interesting to me to see that, and I made that correlation that drugs and the sand, and that if you think about it, he's like a drug dealer and giving people what they want to forget, regardless of what happens.
If you kind of think about it, the way he uses his sand is when he's giving dreams to people, he's transporting them to other worlds. But physically, he actually used the sand for transportation as well.
Yeah, so did we learn that in this episode or was the next episode? So no, so we learned kind of what it really did. We just saw a little bit at the end of it.
Yeah.
So at the end of this episode, introduces another new character, which was Matthew, which replaced Jessamy, right?
Jessamy or something
Jessamy,
like
which
that.
was the other. Are they crow or magpies?
They call it crow.
Or ravens.
Raven? No, they call it raven.
They call it
in this
Raven.
one, yeah.
Okay, not the crow. So the Raven was a new Raven given to him was Matthew by Lucius. Lucius was the one that gave it to her.
Lucienne or something?
Yeah, Lucienne. She told the
She
bird to go
sent
there.
Matthew.
Yeah, and we find that Matthew used to be human, and Matthew is like really. I guess I like the character so far in the introduction of it. At the end of the thing, he doesn't really want to go to hell, but
Yeah.
he's like, "Fuck it, I'll go to hell."
Just go.
So I like it, his personality there. The other
Ride or die personality.
Yeah, and the other part was when Morpheus was telling him, don't spy on me, and he was like, homeboy, like, if I was to spy on you, you would never know.
Yeah.
And so it was like one of those things, like he's like being upfront. He's like, dude, I'm here to help you. Let's do this thing. Let's get it done.
Matthew was right, though, because Morpheus technically didn't notice him. Joanna was the one that
Yes.
pointed him out
Yes.
and said, he has to be yours.
That is true because Joanna said, "Who's your friend?"
Yeah.
and he's like, "What?" Yeah, so he didn't know when he was actually there.
Yeah, he didn't notice. Joanna pointed it out to him.
But also my thing is I'm questioning because I didn't go back and watch the first episode, but I feel like that Jessamy was his cloak, and he had a different wardrobe I feel like in the beginning than he does
It
now.
wasn't a long coat like currently.
I feel like it was more like a cape or something or a
Oh,
cloak.
that I'm not
Because
sure.
when they captured him, he was laying on the floor, and I thought he was like he had like a hood on. And then when they went to go grab his clothes after taking everything else, the bird flew off because it turned into a bird. So I'm curious about that. I need to go back and watch it.
Yeah.
But other than that, the episode to me had been so far the most lively episode compared to the first two.
That's because I had some action in it.
Yeah, but I think is because the Raven. I like the Raven, and I like, of
Yeah.
course, Constantine, as they say. So that to me, it was kind of remind me of when we watched Book of Boba Fett, and it was okay. But when the Mandalorian came and you hear that music, it was
Yeah.
just like, oh, it's on. Like, this is
Yeah.
about to be good. That's not on that level with Constantine, but it still made it that much better to me. So overall, this is the best episode. But
Yeah.
they're
'Cause the
going to
first two
hell.
were kind of slow.
They're going to hell, so we're going to see what happens when they go to hell. I'm curious to know what their interpretation of hell is,
Yeah.
compared to other people's interpretation.
Burn,
So,
baby, burn.
yeah. So, with that note, let's get up out of here for this episode. So,
Yeah.
we'll be back for episode 4 of The Sandman. If you want to follow us, please do so. If you want to share it, if you want to hit the like button, ring the
Comment
bell,
below as well.
please do so. And you can also check us out on.
Instagram, SMZ Comics, and you can also look at our whatnot sales on SMZ Comics as well.
All right, we'll check you guys out for our next episode. Make sure to check us out, Sandman episode number 4.
All right.